So next we have Reverend Vonshelle Beneby. She is a chaplain and bereavement coordinator and has served over 10 years in the hospice field. Vonshelle provides pastoral care to hospice patients and their families. Vonshelle provides community education as well as facilitates grief, loss, and caregiver support groups. Prior to hospice care, Vonshelle served as the assistant to the President of Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach and has over 15 years of experience as a counselor and director of programs, including a treatment program for women and their substance-exposed newborns. She's been in a juvenile assessment center and a juvenile day treatment program and high-risk groups and individuals. Vonshelle has been a co-facilitator of the East Central Florida ALS support group for over 5 years. Vonchelle's work recognition includes being a certified trainer, a lecturer, and multiple recipients of awards for outstanding chaplain service. She serves on numerous boards and is a member of the Florida Crisis Response Team, responding to disasters, traumatic events, and catastrophes. Vonchelle's presentation today is Stress and Self-Care, Ways to Nurture Ourselves. Please note that one of her favorite populations to work with is the ALS population and their caregivers. So please welcome Vonshelle Beneby.
Well, good morning. I saw everyone running and getting blankets, and all I could say is I totally get it. So as Marissa said, I am one of the co-facilitators for the Central Florida Support Group. And so this presentation is not only based on the feedback that has occurred within that support group, but also in the work that I do. I am a hospice chaplain. I am a bereavement coordinator, which means I do a lot of grief and support groups, education based on not just a death, but a loss. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I also know that I may not get through all of the slides, but if you have questions or anything, just feel free to reach out to me and we'll certainly chat. So you're going to see an image, and that image is what? It's a waterfall. So when you look at that image, what comes to mind? And when I ask that question, people usually say, well, the waterfall is something that is cool, it is refreshing. A waterfall is a place where you can go and just kind of renew yourselves. And so when I ask the question, how are you? I mean, how are you really? What do most people tend to say? I'm what? I'm okay. I heard I'm good, or I think it's like one of the top 3 answers, I'm fine. And I'll ask, well, what does that mean? I'm fine. What does good mean? So you have the waterfall image, and then what is this image? A desert. A desert usually represents what? Barren, lifeless, what? Dry. So sometimes we have those waterfall moments, and sometimes we have those desert moments. And so when you look at that image, where are you in that image? The waterfall moment where things are refreshing and cool, or the desert moment where things just seem kind of just dry and barren? And I will say sometimes we tend to do what? Go back and forth, depending on what's going on in our lives. And so when it comes to self-care, some things that we want to keep in mind is that self-care requires us to, whether we're in that waterfall moment or that desert moment, self-care requires us to simply pause. Pausing meaning just to take a break and find times to take a break. It also means, regarding self-care, to take a moment to reflect, to think about and to take in those moments and what is happening, and then to learn while we're reflecting, and then to apply those things that we have learned. And so why are we studying stress? Well, stress is a normal reaction. Stress is neither good nor bad. Stress just is. But the times that stress can become unhealthy in our lives is when it affects how we feel and how we behave. Stress becomes unhealthy when it affects our overall quality of life. The latest research, latest meaning in 2020, the newest research has not come out yet. And what do we have in 2020? COVID. The latest research in 2020 says this. If we look at the older generation, older meaning the 50-year plus generation, the number of concerns are this. The top concern are our health-related concerns. Why? Because as we become older or as we age or as we become mentally aware of what can happen to us, we become increasingly concerned about our health, our well-being. And it is no surprise that the next thing that is listed from the research is the economy. Why? What does it take for us to take care of ourselves in terms of our health? Money. And so people are not only concerned about their health, they're also concerned about the economy and what is happening and what's in their finances, and do they have the ability to pay to get the help that they need. The third thing that is listed are family responsibilities, and they kind of go hand in hand. If I'm concerned about my health and I'm concerned about the economy and can I pay for these things, who is going to support me? And so there's concerns about the family or friends who are sometimes like our family. Gender. During the research, they also examined which gender seems to have the most concerns in terms of stress. Is anybody surprised by the number one answer? No. What's the top gender? Female. Why? What we have found, not only through the research, but also when I'm doing presentations in a lot of the support groups, women or people who identify as women, the nurturers, tend to take on. Why? Think of how you were raised and what you were taught based on your gender. We do. We take care of. We're there for everybody. We sacrifice ourselves for the sake of. And so it is no surprise that through the research, women seem to experience the most stress. And so what does stress affect overall? Stress is like a juggling act because stress affects us physically. It also affects us emotionally, mentally, and this one is one that is often not spoken of, but is one that I hear of often. As I said, I'm a hospice chaplain, spiritually. And so we're going to look at how it affects our whole being by looking at these areas. And again, it's like a juggling act, trying to figure out how we're going to balance all of these things that are happening within us and to us for our whole being. So the physical experience, and I use the word experience because experience means we're living in it and through it. So the physical experience of stress, headaches. And so when I'm talking to people or when people are sharing what they're feeling, they start talking about the physical impact of stress. And they'll say, well, Vaughn, all of a sudden I'm having these headaches. And they'll say, well, you know, it must be sinuses or it must be allergies. Or they'll say, I don't know why. I just took something and then I'm not getting any better. High blood pressure is another thing, another way that we experience stress. Shortness of breath. That means if I get up, I walk down, go to my chair, all of a sudden I have a shortness of my breath. It's like an anxiety or a panic attack. Sometimes people will experience that shortness of breath, and what do? They call 911, or they rush to the hospital. They get all this cardiac workup just to find out it's not cardiac related. Gastrointestinal, and I'm going to try to explain this without being too blunt, but gastrointestinal basically means your stomach is doing all kind of crazy things, uncontrollable things that it didn't used to do before. Back pain. Why back pain? I'm going to step to the side for a moment, because most of the time we experience stress where? Yeah, our shoulders, which means we're literally doing what? Carrying it. And so, we'll start here, and then where we feel it all down. Back pain, it's not unusual. And sometimes you'll see people kind of doing this and this. It's like, ugh. Well, that's part of the physical experience of stress. And fatigue. It's like, I just can't sleep enough. I'm always tired. Why am I so tired? So now the emotional experience of stress, being angry or frustrated or irritable. Anything sets you off. The cute little dog you used to love now gets on your nerves because he's yapping all the time. Anything just sets you off. You're moody. Or sometimes the opposite happens, where any little thing, you start weeping or feeling sad, or now you're feeling depressed. What used to give you joy doesn't give you joy anymore. Or you become more anxious and fearful about anything and everything. Or you may start to experience loneliness. Loneliness is not uncommon, because when people are experiencing stress, the mind begins to race. And so all kind of thoughts come up that are not the healthiest of thoughts. So loneliness is one of those thoughts. Well, what's going to happen? And what is this going to look like? And how is it going to be for me? And I'm in this all by myself. Negative thoughts tend to come, where you just don't see the good in anything or anybody, and then guilty is the other one. And sometimes people say, well, why would people feel guilty about stress? Guilt tends to come up when people start to recognize something isn't right, but then they feel bad that they feel bad. And so they experience guilt in that way. And so the next thing we're starting to juggle, right? We just did the physical, we just did the emotional, and now we're on the mental. Mental is when we become forgetful. We get up, I'm going to go to the refrigerator because I want to get a drink of water. I get up, I go to the refrigerator, I open the refrigerator door, and I'm like, why am I standing here in the refrigerator? I do not remember. The things that used to be simple tasks, we're no longer able to do them because we're starting to feel the pressure of the stress that we're having. It's no longer easy for us to make what used to be clear decisions. For breakfast, I usually have X, Y, Z, and now I can't think about what I want for breakfast. It's hard to make a choice about anything because we're starting to feel the burden and the heaviness of the stress. We start to become unable to concentrate about anything, and now we have become completely disorganized, and we're worried, and our mind is racing. And so the spiritual experience of stress is, why is this happening to me? Where is God, creator, higher power? What is going on? I don't understand this. Why would the creator allow this to happen? And I'm going to talk a little faster because I'm noticing the time. And so now we're juggling all of these things that we're experiencing. And so stress overload and ineffective stress is this. Remember, stress is neither good nor bad, it just is, but it becomes unhealthy when it affects what? Our quality of life. Where we're no longer able to function, we're no longer able to make those decisions. Our anger, our mood tends to increase. That's stress overload, but how we respond to that impacts whether or not we're doing it in a healthy or an unhealthy way. Sleep pattern is one of the number one markers for people who are experiencing stress and not coping effectively. Fatigue is another one. The inability to ask for help. I'm recognizing that something is going on. I'm recognizing that I'm just not doing well, but you know what? I don't want to tell anybody. Remember, one of those things that's the marker is loneliness. Nobody's going to get it. Nobody's going to understand it. So I'm just going to keep it to myself. So if you look at this graph, anything in that graph jump out at you. These are the ways that stress affects us. Usually people can start going, oh, wait a minute, I never thought about that. I never thought about I'm restless. I never thought about now I've become accident prone. I never thought about I'm more fussy. I never thought about even our skin, our body reacts to that. So the first thing to do is acceptance. Okay, well, perhaps I am feeling stressed. I am feeling overwhelmed. I do need to take care of myself. This is about how we're going to nurture ourselves. So I need to accept that. And acceptance is the act of opening up to painful feelings and sensations that we might otherwise want to avoid or fight. So acceptance of having stress or just not doing well means this. It means now that I have the awareness, I'm willing to do something about it. And so what are those things that we can do is to understand that there are 4 different stages. We're either thriving, surviving, struggling, or we're in full-blown crisis mode. And if you look at the chart, it gives examples of each one of those categories. Thriving is, I got this. Yeah, I'm feeling a little stressful. But you know what? I'm functioning. I got this. Something isn't right. Surviving means, I'm feeling a little off. I'm not eating like I used to. I'm not sleeping. I'm not taking care of myself like I used to. The things that used to bring me joy and peace are no longer doing that. Something is just not quite right. Struggling is, again, stress impacts what? The quality of our life. So struggling means I just can't keep up. I can't do this anymore. I'm losing things. I'm not able to keep track of anything. I just can't do this. Crisis mode, which is in the red, crisis mode means the realization that I'm just flat out not going to make it. So once we realize where we are, here are some tips. So again, when we talk about stress and self-care and nurturing ourselves, we're talking about our whole being, the mind, the body, and the spirit. So the first thing to do is to be aware of our thoughts. And what I also ask people to do is when you have your thoughts, be honest with yourself. Am I thriving? Am I surviving? Am I just trying to keep up, or am I not going to make it? Be aware of the thoughts that go with the acceptance piece. That also means knowing that there perhaps is the need for emotional support. That's the beauty of the ALS, right? Association, the support groups. When we're in those support groups, we hear people being totally transparent with what? Their thoughts. Saying, this is hard. I don't think I'm going to make it. And they're talking about the different griefs and losses, the loss of, and they kind of fill in the blank. Because with that comes the acceptance of, okay, I need to take a look at this. Talk to someone. Now, some of these things you're going to hear, you're probably like, oh yeah, Vaughn, I've heard that before. Nurturing ourselves meaning not only having the acceptance, right, which means the awareness, but it also means the third piece, which is the doing, right? So another key to self-care is talk to someone, and I ask you to think about the people that you talk to, and this is for all of us, either the person's living with ALS or the caregiver's loved ones, family, and friends. You talk to someone that is going to be non-judgmental. I don't know about you, but do you all have those family and friends that when you see them coming, you kind of run the opposite way because you know it's going to be all about them? I'm seeing a lot of this. Right? We all have those people in our lives. You could be going through an awful moment or something you just want to share, and you see them coming, and you're like, they're not going to get it. So be mindful of who's in your circle. Be mindful of who you're sharing things with. Have a circle. And just talk it through, talk it out. Be with someone who will allow you to just be yourself. And let people know when you need them. Again, loneliness is one of the key indicators of stress being unhealthy. And admitting when you need help. And don't rush to make big decisions. Sometimes people are having a stressful moment. Next thing you know, they're selling their house. They're looking for a new car. They're going to move. And I'm like, wait. Because that actually does what? Adds to the stress. Put off making those big decisions if you're able to. The other thing is to relax and just breathe. Take a breath. It's okay to just pause, to give ourselves permission to just stop and take a break. It also means that we give ourselves permission to just rest. We can get so caught up in the busyness of life that we forget to, 1, pause, 2, take a breath, and 3, to just rest. Because we got to go here, we got to go there, we got to do it. No, you don't. You don't have to. There are things that we don't have to do right away, so stop. The other thing that we could do is allow ourselves to just be, and that means to be whatever that is. If you need to yell, yell. You need to cry, cry. We tend to be so guarded and put up this facade. When we do those things, that actually causes a release to where that adds to our healing, along with that acceptance. So allow yourself to just be whatever and however that is. And sometimes people will literally pen or write their thoughts down. They'll say, well, I don't feel comfortable talking to somebody, but I'm going to write it down, because all of that is also a form of release. And create time for movement. I was sitting over there in the corner, and I don't know if you all have been hearing the music that they've been playing here, and it's been so cool watching people just kind of move and bop and dance. Yeah, have some fun, create some kind of movement, because when we have movement, that creates an internal shift within us, which is also a form of release. When it comes to the spiritual piece, share those spiritual questions with someone that you think will understand, but also accept and understand the spiritual questions that you have, and seek solace in those spiritual rituals or beliefs that perhaps you may have gotten away from, whether it's a yoga practice or meditation, music, devotionals, whatever that is. Go back to those days if you haven't done that already. Be mindful of your diet and your nutrition, what you are taking in. I will be honest and tell you that when I am stressed, I love anything with any ice cream. I love it. And I know that if I get a pint and I'm going to have 1 spoonful and I look and I have completely finished the pint, that is not good, Vaughn. So be mindful of diet and nutrition. So when you start feeling anxious and you want to snack and do things, grab the healthy snacks, if possible. Go get a massage or go to a spa or listen to music. Create a memory book. A memory book is when you're telling stories of who you are. And I'm wrapping up, Marixa, now. But I want to do this last one, and I know I'm clicking fast. Be gentle with yourself. So part of nurturing ourselves means we are gentle with ourselves. We're mindful of what we say about ourselves and how we are. We are saying positive and encouraging things to ourselves. And I know my time is up, so thank you all so very much.